I'm sure if you haven't been living under a rock for the last few months, you have heard of Sara Brady. You might not know her name, but you've definitely heard her story. She is the Idaho mother who was arrested at a public park funded by her tax dollars during the coronavirus because the mayor and the governor had decreed in their infinite wisdom that people should not be allowed to go outside. So we are very fortunate to have Sara with us. Sara, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the program.
Thank you for having me, Alex. Happy to be here.
Wonderful. Well, Sara, for those who have been living under a rock, could you give us a little bit of kind of the background? What happened that ended up with you being arrested?
Sure. Well, just a quick synopsis was I took my kids to a play date. It was a planned play date at the park. I actually hadn't planned on going until that last minute. I was there almost an hour late to this play date. When I got there, the playground, the caution tape that had wrapped the playground up, the playground equipment up, was torn down, and lots of children were playing there. And I figured, okay, well, other people's kids are playing, then so can kids can too. And about 5 minutes later, three police officers showed up, and I was pretty surprised that they showed up because there was people playing basketball in other areas of the park, and lots of people clustered together, um, disobeying the mayor's order to not be in groups of more than 10, and they're not social distancing. And so I basically asked, why is the playground closed? And he said basically something to the effect of, we can close it at any time. And
It's public and we can close it and we're closing it.
Okay, under what grounds?
I just told you.
I
We
don't
can
hear
close
you.
it
I'm sorry, I
anytime.
didn't hear you. You don't need to talk to me rude. I'm just a mom with my kids.
You guys gotta go.
I hadn't actually stepped onto the playground until the moment they arrived, and stepped onto the bark to basically question because of the frustration of seeing everything closed down and my taxpayer dollars going to something that I couldn't understand. How it was just arbitrary to me. Anyway, at one point, one of the police officers, he just was very aggressive in my mind, just verbally, just I don't know. He just seemed very unprofessional is the best word I can think of. And at one point, he points to me and says, "Ma'am, I've told you I've told you." And then he starts counting down from five. And at that moment, I just felt so demeaned standing there on bark trying to speak to a law enforcement officer about this that I just said, "Fine, arrest me for being in a park."
So are you going to
Ma'am,
arrest me for not being
you have
trespassing?
5 seconds. 3.
Arrest me for being in the park. Do it. Record it.
Okay, this is not. Officer, you don't want to do that. Officer, you don't.
You're being detained right now.
Am I being arrested or detained?
Her kids are here. Her kids are here. What is going to happen? Who's got her kids?
And I was booked into jail. And, because we are letting out pedophiles and murderers, I was a danger to society for some reason. So, yeah, at this point, I have a trespassing charge. And I was accused of ripping the tape off, which was untrue. My trespassing charge carries a penalty of up to 6 months in jail and $1,000 fine.
Oh my goodness! Wow. So what made you decide to kind of refuse to comply? Why did you decide that I think my kids should be allowed to play? Why did you decide to not just grab your kids and take off? What made you think that would be good?
Yeah, so I mean, everything happened very quickly. There was some people, apparently there's people accusing me of being there for a protest. It was not a protest for when I showed up. It was a play date. And really it just all happened in that moment. It was the culmination of seeing all of these orders that were very arbitrary. It was the choosing of essential workers and non-essential things, or non-essential workers. It was the choosing of essential businesses and non-essential things. And so for me, I'm sitting there thinking, but if I put my kids in a daycare in Meridian, they haven't wrapped up their playgrounds with crime scene tape. And it was so arbitrary to me. And then to top it off, I am married to a police officer, and I didn't tell the police officer that, I don't use that, but to have an officer who I felt like was not acting in the full professional scope that he could be, and instead of marching orders to people, we're talking about moms who've been frustrated for, at that point, almost 6 weeks with their kids. So that was that, at that point, it just was, the counting down to me. And I thought, this is so arbitrary. And I'm in a park. When I'm imagining people get arrested, it's for serious things. I don't think of someone in a park with their kids as a serious crime. So that's where you see me basically escalate and say, just fine, just do it then. So
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. No, that's an incredible story. And so, one of the things that's interesting that you brought up is this whole idea that the government or the governor or the mayor is going to decide, hey, you're essential, you're not essential, you can move, you're not allowed to move, you can take your kids to a daycare or a park. No, you have to stay locked up at home. In your view, is that constitutional to be discriminating against people based on their job to decide whether they can move about and use public facilities? I mean, do you think that's a reasonable exercise of government power? And if not, what would you think it would be a better response?
absolutely not. I do not think it's constitutional. How do we decide for our citizens if they can provide for their family? And provide doesn't always have to mean financial, right? I felt like going to a park, I was helping to provide health for my children. I mean, we're out in the sun getting fresh air. I'd seen an article come out saying how dangerous it was actually to be in your house with recirculated air. So that, no, I don't. And, sure, government can make recommendations. I have no problem with recommendations, but to tell me COVID-19 exists on a playground equipment, but then to say it doesn't exist on the picnic tables 5 feet away from that playground equipment, I just don't buy that. I'm sorry. It needs to be consistent. If it's not consistent, it's clearly arbitrary. And if it's arbitrary, why are we then arbitrarily enforcing those things as well?
Yeah, no, those are all good questions, and I think a lot of Americans want to know. And I know at least most of the states that I've looked at do not have any kind of legal or constitutional provisions allowing governors to become dictators and decide who can move or lock everybody in their homes. It's very bizarre. It appears that this has kind of escalated to a very significant degree now. If I understand correctly, this has now been moved to the Idaho Attorney General. Can you tell us a little bit about the prosecution? Do you think they're trying to make an example out of you, or just throw the book at you? It just seems to a lot of people to be really out of proportion that you're going to arrest a mom and throw the book at her like this. What's the deal with the prosecution? Can you give us some details?
Yeah, so that's a good question because my husband is a police officer. Where it was originally routed to, they had to conflict it out to be impartial. But it was conflicted out to the Attorney General, or let me actually look at the paper, to the Attorney General, Idaho Attorney General, or his designee, and that's where it is now. And so I was told the concern isn't the fact that it was conflicted out to the AG, it's the fact that they have the case now and haven't dismissed it. So I am expecting to be taken to the cleaners. I mean, talk about bringing a gun to a playground. I mean, literally, I'm a mom, 4 kids, and when we have people losing their jobs and livelihood, you're going to use taxpayer dollars to prosecute me over this? I just think it's a really gross misuse of taxpayer funds, frankly.
Yeah, I think a lot of people agree with you. I saw some of the news reports about the protests in Idaho. People carrying signs, legalize motherhood. And so, Sarah, for people who want to support you somehow, do you have a website or any place that people can go to learn more or to get in touch with you? What's the best thing for people who think this is outrageous to get involved?
Yeah, so I do have a website. It's supportsarabrady.com. That's Sarah without an H. So support Sara, SARA, Brady.com. And then there's also a Facebook page, and I'll do updates as I go to court hearings, et cetera. My next court hearing is July 9th at 1:30 p.m.
Okay, so very good. Well, thank you for those details. And is there anything else that I didn't ask you about that you want to share with people? I mean, what's the sentiment in your community? What's the sentiment in Idaho? I know Idaho really has a reputation as like a freedom-loving, conservative, pro-family state. And yet, I know a lot of other conservative states did not do these kinds of lockdowns. I mean, one of your close nearby states, South Dakota, didn't have any kind of lockdown at all. My governor here in Florida has been saying that some governors are acting like dictators and forgetting that the people have rights. How do the people of Idaho see this? I've seen the protests, but I mean, is there any public support for prosecuting you? What's the mood up there?
It was interesting that you asked that because right after I was arrested, my husband received texts from coworkers saying, "Your wife is my hero." And then there's been other comments too, because there was a group that went and actually protested at the officer's house in my name, but I was unaware of it. I wasn't okay with that. So there, I think then the mood shifted a little bit, at least in regards to police officers. But I know that there's police officers out there that are supportive. I mean, the question is, at what point do we draw the line? That's the kind of the question I've had, because I've had people tell me, well, you shouldn't have done that. And then my question is, well, I want to know, then where do we draw the line? Because Rosa Parks, right? Rosa Parks, she stood up for something she believed in. And this is a situation where I stood up for something I believe in. So if not, when? And if not this, how? So we have to set up at some point, because if we don't stand up when it's easy, we're definitely not going to stand up when it's hard.
Yeah, very good. Well, hey, Sarah, thank you so much for being with us, spending a little bit of time with us and sharing your story. We appreciate it. And to the viewers out there, this is what's happening in America today. And if you value your individual liberty, if you think we ought to have constitutional guarantees, if you think governors need to work with legislatures and within the bounds of their state constitutions, now would be a good time for you to get involved, folks. Things are happening very quickly in America. We have a lot of abuses going on all across the country. This one happened to kind of go viral and make headlines, not just across Idaho, but all over the country. But for every story like this that does get a lot of media attention, there's hundreds more that nobody's heard about. So if you value this kind of information, make sure you share, make sure you like, subscribe, go to our website, thenewamerican.com. If you want to support Sarah, she gave you the website there. Thanks again for tuning in. Come back for more, and God bless you all.